Welcome back to the Created to Thrive podcast. I'm your host, Lori Snyder, and this is episode number 103, titled Overcoming Fear, the Power of Pivoting for Personal and Professional Growth with my good friend, Frannie Foltz. In this episode today, we are going to have a great conversation with my friend, Frannie Foltz, the founder of Shine with Frannie, and we're going to confront some of the issues that try to hold us back from pursuing our passion and our purpose so we can live fulfilled in that all God has planned for us. And we're going to discuss today specifically the concept of pivoting, which is the art of making significant change in your life, whether it's your personal life, with a relationship, or a move, or a vocation, and how it can actually be a catalyst for personal and professional growth. And if you've heard Frannie before on my podcast, she is very transparent. And so she's going to share some of her own personal stories and some key insights that will help you overcome the various fears and limitations that try to keep us stuck. So whether you're making personal life changes or contemplating a passion project or making a professional shift, this episode offers actionable advice for overcoming fears and hindrances or anything that's keeping you stuck to help you make transformative decisions. Now, here are 3 key takeaways from this episode. First of all, Frannie is going to emphasize the need to take action. It's important that we take action to overcome the fears because inactivity only perpetuates the problem. So it's crucial that we identify where we're stuck, and then we can start making small steps towards improvement because faith requires action. Second, recognizing your worth. Frannie highlights the significance of recognizing your worth and the gifts that God has placed within you. And by aligning your thoughts and actions with God's will, you can believe in yourself and confidently pursue your goals and dreams. And finally, embracing change. Frannie shares her personal experiences of pivoting and transitioning into something different. And sometimes we need to let go of what's holding us back and make room for positive change and growth. And we cannot be afraid of embracing change and pursuing our true calling. And we want to help you overcome whatever is trying to keep you stuck so you can unlock the courage you need to trust God, to believe in how He's leading you, and then have the wisdom to make decisions. And so after this episode, go and listen to 3 other episodes that Frannie has been a guest on, because you will know Frannie is my fun friend, and there's always some fun things that we talk about. You're going to laugh. You're going to be entertained, as she edutains you, and she's going to educate you and entertain you at the same time. But those 3 episodes are episode number 49, Tips to Reset and Refocus for Growth, and episode number 28, Eliminating Weight, a soul and body connection to living in whole health. And Frannie shares on this podcast as well her transformational weight story, but really goes into that in episode number 28. And then episode number 19 is Thriving in Faith, Fitness, and Fun. And fun is something that we talk a lot about in that episode 19 because it's something that we, as we grow older, really stop incorporating in our lives. So I know you'll get blessed with that episode. All right, so let's get on with this show because we want to help you thrive in all aspects of life. All right, my friends, welcome back to the Created to Thrive podcast. I have my dear friend back on the show with me, Frannie Foltz with Shine with Frannie. And if you've listened to this podcast any length of time, you have heard Frannie several times. So welcome back, Frannie.
I am so glad to be here. It's always good to reunite with you. And welcome to all of your listeners. Perhaps they're joining for the first time or coming back again.
Yes. And you are my fun shine friend, as I call you. So I know this is going to be a great episode. And we're going to be talking about something that really became, I think, a hot topic in the last few years with the pandemic, everyone having to do a lot of shifting or what we're calling pivoting to really reevaluate their life and so forth. But before we get into that, why don't you just tell people about yourself, catch us up to date? Because I think it's been a year since we have done a podcast together. So why don't you just catch us up on who you are and what you are currently involved with?
Awesome. Well, I'm originally from Western Pennsylvania, but I'm a Florida girl through and through. So that was one of the many common threads that Lori and I have had in common, growing up kind of Midwest. I always feel like Western PA is a little bit Midwest, but then, I just love all things fun and sun. So if you follow me on social, it will not be unusual to find me doing a cartwheel, or at least attempting to do a cartwheel, or in a unicorn costume or something fun like that. But really, I have a heart to help other people get healthier and stronger and more confident using God's word. And I really think that my own personal story is a testament of that. So I've lost 125 pounds, and I had done everything, Laura, you and I've talked about this before in terms of, Jenny Craig, Weight Watchers, Slim Fast. I mean, you name it, I did it. I tried it. I even tried prescription drugs, prescribed by a doctor. I tried hydroxycut over the counter at GNC, green tea diets and pills and all the things. But really what it was the power of the Holy Spirit, prayer, perseverance, lots of perspiration as well, sweat sessions in the gym and whatnot. But really what it came down to was just really the Holy Spirit kind of convicting me of some things. And I really lived and believed a lie for a long time that once I lost weight, I would get healthy. But you and I have talked before that it's the reverse, that I got healthy on the inside and then I was able to lose weight, because that's where the true heart transformation happens.
Yeah. Yeah. And we've shared that a lot before with the soul care that you have to do, because transformation truly happens from the inside out. And, you can be eating the salads and working out, but you still have those toxic emotions and your cortisol levels and all that actually work against you. So you've done a lot of the hard work, and I'm just so proud of you and your journey. And we're going to talk today specifically about overcoming fear and the power of pivoting for personal and professional growth. And that's a lot of P's for.
Well, I think you have a whole podcast about some P's in there. You have like the 5 P's of something. So, I just talked about the power of prayer and perseverance and the Holy Spirit and all the things. So we're on to something today. So
that's right. Right.
Yeah.
So many people are paralyzed by fear of making significant change in their careers or their personal life, because they've worked so hard to get to where they're at and they're concerned about losing that. So can you share some insights or maybe even a personal story that can help our listeners understand how pivoting can actually be a catalyst for growth rather than a setback?
Absolutely. So I think that's also another one of the things that you and I have in common, with all your moves over the years and whatnot. And while I haven't moved, as many times as you have, I've certainly made a lot of moves in my life, more, shifts in relationships and things like that. And so I have always, I shouldn't say always, but from the time I was a young girl, I was actually just talking about this today with a friend, that in 4th grade, my house was taken with the tornado, completely demolished. We lost everything, my Cabbage Patch dolls, my Barbie dream house. And I think at that point, I started to really realize everything could be gone in a vapor. And I think that helped me really realize the importance of kind of letting go of things and not focusing on acquiring more things in your life. So I think that certainly has helped me to be able to make some of these transitions, because I think it's Corrie ten Boom, who is a Holocaust survivor, who talks about, hold things loosely in your hand, otherwise God will pry it open. And so I think about the importance of that, because, while we know that God's not a person who's going to sit there and pry it open, he'll give you opportunities to release things, whether that be weight, shame, guilt, finances, a mammon spirit, an orphan spirit, abandonment spirit, all the ways in which, the enemy tries to keep us down. And so I think once you start releasing the things from your hands, so as you, the listener, I want you, I invite you to think about what is something that might be holding you back or paralyzing you. I think that was the word you used, paralyzing you in that fear from making that decision. What's on the other side of that fear? And are you holding on to it, that white knuckle death grip? And then asking yourself, some of the questions that I ask myself when I'm making a decision, many times people will say, well, what's the worst thing that can happen? And I like to believe, well, what's the best thing that can happen if I let go of this? Really coming from that place of abundance and really coming from that place of desire, and you're always the one who reminds me of Psalm 37:4, that God will give you the desires of your heart. And so when you say, okay, I really want this thing, right? Is in alignment with God's word. Well, why am I holding on to it so tightly? Because he wants to give that to me, so long as, again, it aligns with his word and, the timing and all the things. So I think that's really helped me, is just some of the questions that I ask myself. And again, the life experience that I've had, I have been homeless before, not, in fourth grade, but when I was 26 years old, I was engaged to a guy, and we were living together. I got saved right after that, actually. But with that, that was one of the things where I was like, oh my gosh, like, now where do I go? Because he said, you want this, this is your choice. So where are you going to go? And I think, again, then I was like, okay, like, if this is the worst thing that's going to happen to me, I mean, I had so many friends who were willing to take me, and I was like, and I was able to build myself back up from that. But again, it was the adversity, and it wasn't the worst thing. I wasn't homeless. Like, please understand me. I know that there are some people, I don't want to minimize some situations that people are in where they're truly homeless. I had a lot of friends who took me in and tended and cared for me very well, but I didn't have a house for a long time that was my own. So I think that those are some of the things that kind of toughened me up, if you will, and gave me a different perspective to be able to make those pivots. So I was no longer stuck in that paralysis.
Mm-hmm. We've also talked about how it all works for you. Like, nothing that you have done and gone through has been wasted. They're like building blocks or stepping stones, and God uses all of it. And one of the things that we've always talked about is that all works for you.
Yes. And I couldn't agree with you more. And it's funny that building blocks, I don't think I've ever really heard you and I talk about that. We definitely have talked about it all works for you, but, for that listener out there, think about, a brick wall. You can take every one of those bricks and make them either into a wall or into your proverbial yellow brick road, right? Are you going to walk on it to the next place or the next destination? Or are you going to go ahead and put up a wall so that you literally, encamp yourself, right? And so I think that that's a really powerful thing. Like, if everyone were to think about the 5, 10, 20 things that have kind of happened in their lives, are they using that as a place of block, or are they using that as literally, an opportunity to walk upon? That's a great analogy for you.
And then one of the things too that we talked about in your journey is, when we talk about fear, is, what are you believing about that? And we had to do that shift of, instead of a negative what if, shifting that to the positive. Well, what if? What
Right.
if your dreams, because God has put those things in you. And that was another thing that we've talked about in the past, is what has never left you.
Right.
Because when it says that God gives you the desires of your heart, it's because he's put those God-given desires in you for discovery, but there's a time of maturity and process and so forth. And that is something that you really stepped into, was not devaluing what you've gone through or who you are or having those desires, but really looking at, what is it? How has God created me?
Mm-hmm.
And how is stepping into this really fulfilling who God's created me to be? Can you talk a little bit about that?
For sure. And I love, that expression of what if, you can look at the either side of the coin, right? And so one of the things I actually wrote about this in a blog, and then actually did a podcast about this too, is changing the whole expression of what if to when, instead of saying like, what if I never get married? What if I never get my dream job? What if I never, and really start you and I talk about this the expression of living with expectancy, and really making sure that we are open to receiving God's blessing for us. Like you just mentioned, he wants to give us these good things. He wants to give us the desires of our heart, and use the things that have come against us, and that we've walked through, not only to be able to walk into our dreams and our destiny, but to be able to walk alongside of someone else too. I made a note while you were talking, I didn't want to interrupt you because Lord knows I can talk for hours, was one of the really powerful books that I read during a transition season of my life. Was I just gotten let go of a position in 2020, right before COVID. It was in February, obviously COVID happened in March. And so the book Quitter by John Acuff is a fantastic book. If any of your listeners or audience members are wanting to possibly make a career transition, it's a great book. But he talks about most of the things, they've actually just studied on this, and there's a lot of research about most of the things that small children do and they gravitate towards when they're young. By the time they're 7 years old, a lot of those mindsets have already been established. And then they actually continue in that vein. So for example, if somebody likes to play with Legos, oftentimes they're an architect or some type of, engineer, interior designer. or if they like painting, or if they're, whatever that is, if they're a math person. And so I thought that was fascinating because from the time I was a little girl, I loved teaching. And I, would sit my, brothers down and my friends in the neighborhood, and I had a blackboard, and I would, have a little pointer, a ruler, and all the things. And now, I'm a health educator. Of course, I even have 3 degrees in education, master's degree. And I love teaching people. Even on my own podcast, I talk about how I edutain people. There's an education element as well as an entertainment element. So the things that you go back to and ask yourself, what did I like to do when I was a little kid? What were some of the things that I enjoy doing? We forget to play as adults, and we forget to just kind of be open and be creative and open-minded to dream even. And if we go back to those places and spaces, before adulting started happening, what were you doing? What were the things that you could sit and do for hours endlessly without even thinking about anything else?
Mm-hmm. And that's so important because we need to reignite those dreams that we have discounted, or we've been disappointed or discouraged. And a lot of times there's just it's a timing involved, not just with us, but with other people. Or I always say too, a lot of times we don't know what we want, but we know what we don't want. But we won't know until we actually put our hand to it and start doing it. And then there's times and seasons, like that season when that grace lifts. We've talked about that before, recognizing when does that grace lift? And grace is God's favor. It's his divine influence on his heart, but it's also his ability to do what we can't do in our natural. That's where we need his guidance and his empowerment to do that. And then when we recognize, boy, it's hard now. And it's not just hard like you can't do it, but it's like you don't want to do it. And there's just that grace that is what I call that grace that lives, that all of a sudden you just know that there's something different, that there's a shift. So God always precedes us, and he's helping us pivot or transition into something different. But it's like a rudder on a ship. Mm-hmm. You make the turn, you might not see things happen for a while, but there is a turn.
Totally. And I couldn't agree with you more that, inaction is still an action, And so you taking that action, I always think about the story where, Moses Abraham, I had to get my forefathers correct there. But when he was called to leave, God said, okay, I want you to leave this country and I want you to go. He was leaving Ur, because we get stuck, right? We get stuck in, what's better, what's bigger, or I'm not smarter than so-and-so. And we think about those places, or we think about the hindrances. And so we're really kind of in that paralysis phase where we don't take that action. And, like you said, what we want, what we don't want. Okay, well, I know I don't want this, but and I think about that with my own weight loss. There a lot of things happened. I mean, I didn't have the prom date. I didn't have a homecoming date, the proverbial, high school rites of passage, if you will. But the pain was not bad enough for me to make the change. Mm-hmm. There was something that was blocking me. And so sometimes we just get comfortable in that discomfort. And it was just like, well, I'm just going to stay here until something else better comes along, and then finally you have to get to a point where you're like, this sucks, and actually that's kind of, I don't want to say, I'm so grateful for the life that God has given me. And over the last few years, I've been traveling full time and have had a lot of things happen where I've had to be in certain places and I've chosen to be in certain places. But I really am at a point where I'm like, okay, God, let's get this together. I need to be on the same page as you. My word this year is align, because I want to align my thoughts, my heart's posture with what like you said, his grace, his mercy, I know it's all available for me, but I also want to know what his will is for me. And I really want to make sure that's in alignment. And I got to a place where I'm like, I don't like where I'm living physically, in the town that I am right now. I don't like where I'm living in terms of, financially, and I want to make some changes. And what is that going to take? And so that's kind of where the position where I'm at now. So I would, to your audience who's listening, I hope this is providing value, because everyone's stuck in one area of your life, whether it be in a relationship, your health, your finances, whatever that is for you. I really want that person, that audience member, to listen today and say, okay, where am I stuck? And what would it take? Like you just said, what I don't want anymore? And what would be one small action step that I could take today to get me to the next best place, even if it's that rudder moving 1 degree.
Yeah. And you have to give yourself permission to make that move, because a lot of times we're waiting on God and he's waiting on us to take that step, because faith takes a step. Faith takes a risk. And I always say that God is our GPS. He's our God positioning system, because we have to have, like you were talking about before, we have to have that action, because you can't move a parked car. If it's in, you got to have it in gear, and God will direct your steps, and he's faithful. But I think there's a part of it too, is that you have to give yourself that permission to say, I am worth it. God has put this in me. It won't leave me. And then there's a timing. Then it could be a suddenly like, oh, okay, now I want to do it, or it's time. And so you've done a great job with doing the heart work, looking at finding your value in who God says you are as his daughter versus in what you do. Instead of trying to perform to achieve, you have been really working on looking at, what do you believe about God? What do you believe about yourself? And really taking those steps forward to fulfill what he has called you into, and being his daughter, and it's his delight. It's his pleasure to give you all the blessings, and because you're blessed.
Right. Well, I couldn't, certainly be doing it without you. And so for anybody who does need a coach, or anybody who does need support, and Lori and I didn't talk about this at all, this is a complete, like an aside, but, she has definitely been such a supportive person to me, and helping, ask the hard questions and give me time to sit with them. And, your homework is to do this. And, have you ever thought about this, or, prayed about this? And I think that that's where, like you said, doing that heart work, it's not easy. It's not easy to go into the recesses of your heart and dig out your fears and, your insecurities and your excuses and all the things, that have kind of been comfortable and, very, very, if you will, just easy, to live by. And God's like, Jesus said, it's not going to be easy. He said, in fact, it's going to be hard. Like, I can guarantee you, it's actually going to be hard. And you're like, oh, shoot. Like, I forgot that part of the Bible. But I do love what you just reminded us of too, that, I think it's Luke 12 that it says, little flock, don't be afraid. The Lord delights in giving you, your Father delights in giving you all the goodness and all the riches of heaven. And, what does that look like? I think that it seems so abstract, right? What is heaven? When it says, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven, we don't even realize. And sometimes, for me, it started with my health, where I was like, I didn't even know what it felt like to be healthy. I hadn't lived that way for so long. I mean, literally, I struggled with an eating disorder from the time I was a child. And so for me, I never really knew. And then now that I've gotten there, I'm like, I don't ever want, now I'm almost 50, and I'm like, yeah, things don't work the way they did, a few years ago or a couple of years ago, but how can I restore that? God made our bodies and designed our bodies to be healthy, but I say that I'll kind of go off on a little bit of a tangent for health, because perhaps somebody who is listening did identify one of those areas as health, and this could actually be also with your finances and even in relationships, actually, the more I think about it. But, sickness is caused by toxicity, something that's happening. And again, it certainly applies to relationships or finances. Either something that's happening that's kind of clogging up the system, if you will, or deficiency, something that is not working, something that is not, acting right. And so when you think about that in your own health, like, or your finances, for those people who are listening who may have identified that, something is toxic in your bank account, whether it be your daily Starbucks run or, these extravagant vacations you're going on that you can't afford, you have way more month than you do money. What is the pattern there, and you've really helped me to identify some of those personal patterns that I've had. And, then, okay, where am I deficient? What do I need the Lord to fill me up so that I do feel worthy of, X, Y, and Z. And so I think that those are hopefully some powerful, just very simple, okay, do I have a toxic pattern? Do I have a deficiency somewhere, in the system that perhaps could be causing this? Because that will then help you again, rectify it so you can make that pivot, so you can kind of go towards your desire, go towards your dream.
Yeah. And that's so important. And I'll talk about this in a second, about community, because you've been so great about community, because we can't do this alone. Like you said, we have to have people, and that's how we grow, because iron sharpens iron. And we have to have the people that we can be completely safe with and honest with, that are going to stretch us, because that's what this whole life is about. And tell us about what you're doing now for your health and the more recent pivot for you.
So I obviously mentioned that I am a health, my background is in teaching, right? I've got several degrees in that. But because of my personal passion, my personal testimony, I definitely had the influence of health where I was like, well, how do I want to use this and combine them? And so over the last few years, and you did mention community, I've met some amazing people who've been able to really support and really give me, if you will, an example that there are some people. I met these people. I was at a healing ministry school last year in Georgia, and I met this couple, and they just really showed me what was possible. And not only did they show me, they believed in me, and they were like, you know what? We want to teach you. We want to help you. We want to, if this is something you're interested in, we want to help you grow with this. And so I became involved in this amazing, opportunity for me to be able to combine, like I said, the health component with the business, opportunity. With my business Shine, I'll be very transparent. Lori knows me very well to know this, but your audience might not. I'm extremely transparent. I've been struggling with finances. And here's a person who literally applied for a Dave Ramsey position because I was living debt free for over 20 years of my life. And this last year, I got myself into a little bit of a bind. And it was very uncomfortable for me because I felt like such a hypocrite, and I don't like debt. So I didn't like that part of it. I've been able to by the grace of God, I've been able to pay off the majority of the debt. I just have a little bit left. And my goal was to do it by the end of this year of 2023. And I'm on target for doing that. But, I was like, okay, Lord, like, I hate this feeling. I don't want to, if I go to the store and I find a Wonder Woman thing, for those of you who are listeners, loyal listeners of Lori's, you better send her Wonder Woman thing. But I want to be able to go and buy Lori something that's a Wonder Woman thing, not have to look at the price tag. I don't want to have that. God wants us to give extravagantly. The Ephesians 3:20 is not just from him to us. It's the revolving door from us to others, And I was thinking, like, I hate living like this. If I wanted to send my nieces and nephews a Valentine package, I don't want to have to look and see, how much the Dollar Tree, how much money we spend there. And, again, working within my budget, not just stewarding well what God has given me. So with that, then the Lord just really gave me this wonderful opportunity. And the Lord spoke to me very clearly about November. And this goes back to what you were talking about earlier, Lori. The Lord spoke to me in November, but if you remember, I did not take action until about June. But again, I met a really great gentleman who really just started showing me what was available and what was possible. But the Lord spoke to me and said, your business name, Shine with Frannie, comes from Matthew 5:14 through 16, to be a light for the Lord and give God glory. And so that's the FF translation. And so when the Lord spoke to me, he said, the first part of that is verse 13, which is you're called to be salt and light. And so this health product that I've, learned about recently, it's simply made of salt. It's 2 ingredients, salt and water. And I was like, what? And the best part about this is that it's a replenishment source. It's not a supplement. It's not something that that your body has to break down like an antioxidant in a blueberry, or even magnesium, which those are all great things. Your body certainly needs those. But this is something your body already makes. And I was like, this is God's design. Like, it totally aligns with my brand. And I was like, why am I not doing this? And it came back to fear. The very first question you asked me about was fear. I was afraid what people were going to think of me because, I was like, if I'm selling something, are people going to want it? Well, guess what? I was selling my coaching services. I was selling my retreats. I was still selling things. So why wouldn't I have a physical, tangible product for them to sell that can help them get healthier now too? And so it was me really looking at some of my biases, some of my excuses, some of the limiting beliefs I had, and really having to face those fears head on and say, you know what? The pain of where I am right now in this financial situation is far worse than where I want to be. And guess what? I'm going to have to face my fear and run towards it. Mm-hmm. And it's working. God's been so, so good and so gracious. And it feels completely I hate to say on brand, that sounds so terrible, but it feels completely congruent, and it feels full of integrity because it still helps people get healthier. And it's helping other people really build the financial, wealth that they need to be able to, again, pour back into the kingdom and steward well what God has entrusted to them.
Yeah. Well, and we've talked about it, how God brought these people into your life. You didn't go looking for it. And, that fear of the unknown is such a paralyzing fear because we've never been there before. Well, that's our whole experience with God, because he's taking us on a journey of discovery, and we're to partner with him, his grace and his mercy, his word, his truth. And so that's what you've done. And so I'm so proud of you for doing that. And the products your mom has been transformed by that. I've been using the products for a year and I sleep amazing from taking them. And there's so many other health benefits. How would someone, if they're curious about what this would do for them, how would they best be able to learn more?
Sure. Well, they could certainly just message me they can find me on, social media, whether it be Facebook or Instagram. I'm Shine with Frannie on both platforms. And hopefully you can add that to the show notes, or I'll send you over some assets for that. But yes, absolutely. Just send me the word thrive. So I know that you're coming to me from Lori, so that she knows that I'm, being very, just full of honor, to her. I want to make sure that her audience members feel loved on. And so just send me that and I'll say, great. Are there any health issues or concerns with my mom? Like you mentioned, Lori, I mean, she's almost completely off of her blood pressure medicine after 26 years, completely off of her statin. She had 2 knee replacements. She can squat. She can do not a somersault, but she can do what do they call it? Sitting cross-legged, on the ground, like sitting
crisscross,
crisscross, whatever.
Crisscross applesauce.
Exactly. My eyesight has improved. My dog's ear infections have gone away. Like, it's just amazing. I've gotten rid of some of my melasma, some of my sunspots and brown spots on my face. So it's just because your cells are healthy again. And so they're starting to talk to one another and say, oh, we need to bring some nutrients here. Oh, we need to go ahead and, repair this area. And so the great part is not only can we live the way that God designed us? You talk a lot about 3 John 2, that your soul will be healthy, just like your body. God intends our body to be healthy, but because of this toxicity, the toxicity and the deficiencies we have, we don't live like that. But thankfully we can. So yeah, send me a message just says Thrive on either Instagram or Facebook, or if you want to put my email in there too, just put Thrive in the subject to make sure I have your name, or if you want me to call you or email, I'm happy to follow up. Just to learn about you, see, this might not be for you, but if it is, oh my gosh, I would love to be able to share it with you.
Yeah, it's amazing. And like you said, your mom couldn't even get off the couch a year ago.
No, 100%.
And she just went to Italy for 3 weeks.
Yeah, exactly. And she went 2 trips. She did 2 trips this year. She went in May and then she went again in August. So she's been a trooper. And she, in Italy, they don't have elevators and escalators and things like that. So she was walking up 3 flights of stairs every day to get to her room in the monastery where she stayed in Italy. And she was like, I did it with no problem, and she did. Almost 80 years old. She's closer to 80 than 70. So that's impressive. And she traveled solo. Yeah. So that's a pretty big deal too.
Yeah.
Luggage and all the things.
I'm so excited for Lucy. So that's awesome. Yes. What would you say, Frannie, to the person that is knowing in their heart that change is coming, that they want to make some changes and they want to not be held back by fear? What would be your encouraging word to them?
That really it's just that God loves you, that the belief of God and the power of God is far more than any fear you might feel. The belief and trust in Him is better than anything, that He's got you. He's, if your heart is beating, He's got you. Yeah. So why would He not want to go ahead and, have that net appear for you? Some of us, I think, are sitting behind the scenes knitting the net, wanting the net to be there. And God's like, I already have it. Go ahead and jump. And we're like, I'm not done yet, and we're sitting in the back with our little knitting needles. And He's like, I've already got it. So just to, the trust and belief that He's got you. And, again, if you have breath in your lungs, there's a plan and He doesn't want you to be afraid of it. So go towards it.
Yeah. Great words. And it is a process and you need community. So reach out to Frannie because Frannie is great. You are one of the best at creating community and connecting people and really just helping people. And you're fun. Your social media Shine with Frannie is you edutain people. And
I try.
And you always just make me laugh. And so the importance of play, and that's the fun thing too, when God is leading you into something, is to be the whole person. It's spirit, soul, body, but that laughter and fun is such a big component to that. And so you are definitely one that has blessed me with that so much and constantly reminds me to lighten up, Frances.
Exactly. Well, if you don't mind, can I put in one last plug for those? Because it makes me think I have that upcoming retreat coming in. It's in Florida. So many of your listeners I know are Florida based, but it's in Florida the last week of October. And one of the ladies messaged me today and she had me just in laughing in stitches about, what we're going to do at the retreat. And I said, I think I might have to have in the swag bags this year, a pack of Depends, because I was peeing my pants just laughing at her. And I thought, oh gosh, we won't be doing any more jumping jacks because that could really be useful, to have Depends there. So But yeah, it will be full of faith, fitness, and fun. So come and join us there too.
Great. And then, so they reach out on you on social media, Shine with Frannie. And is there a word that you want them to message you with that for just retreat?
They could say, hey, listen to Lori's podcast. I heard about your retreat, or just put retreat. I guess, if you want to make it super simple, just put retreat. So Thrive, if you want to connect with Lori, connect with me about some of the opportunities for getting healthier. And then of course, if you want to connect about the retreat, just put retreat.
Yeah. And I was at your retreat in 2021. I was a speaker there for your Come Alive, and we laughed the whole time. It was
we had
a lot of fun. Yeah.
Yes.
All right.
Thanks for letting me join you today.
Thank you. And again, Shine with Frannie. And I just thank you, my friend, that you just bring light, that you do shine. You are salty and you do shine. So, all right. Well, thank you again. And everyone, you were created to thrive. God bless.
Thank you.